Hopefully.
Yep, we're ready. Microphone's on. Okay, I'd like to call the public hearing on proposed local law 1 of 2018, timber law, on February 13th, 2018. And we'll stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, the town clerk will read the legal notice.
Please take notice that the Town of Clinton will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, February 13th, 2018, at 6:15 p.m. at the Town of Clinton Town Hall, 1215 Center Road, Rhinebeck, in the Town of Clinton, New York, prevailing time, or as soon thereafter as the matter is reached on the agenda concerning proposed local law number 1 of 2018 entitled Timber Protection and Harvesting Law, pursuant to Article 16 of the New York Town Law. This law will take effect immediately upon filing with the Secretary of State. Complete copies of the proposed local law are available at the Town of Clinton Clerk's office for inspection during regular business hours. All interested persons and citizens shall have an opportunity to be heard on said proposal at the date, time, and place aforesaid.
Okay, I call the public hearing open here, and raise your hand, come up and speak in the microphone, and address the town board with any of your comments relevant to the law. Okay, Noreen.
Well,
Rotate yours a little
No,
bit this way.
I stopped the noise.
Magic.
The microphone's pointing
Noreen
that
Kohler, Deer Ridge Drive. I have been aware of other towns that have considered timber harvesting laws, and some of them have had problems with excessive timber harvesting on steep slopes. And I know of one town in particular where they had a creek filled in because harvesting on a steep slope allowed so much soil erosion to come down the hill that the small creek involved in this particular landscape was filled in with soil. And the creek, I don't know whether it eventually was rehabilitated or not, but I know that there are some extreme situations that have occurred because towns have not controlled harvesting particularly on steep slopes. Our town, we have a lot of trees. You know, most of us, we live on old farmland where the forests have grown in. So we're used to trees, that's not an issue. The question is, if we wish to cut trees, trees have large root systems and they hold the soil in place. If we're in a situation where heavy rainstorms occur and that soil is not held in place by tree roots, then there's a chance that it can erode and wash downhill. So I think just in terms of safety for the creeks, that this timber harvesting law is a very good idea. We have amazing wildlife habitat in our town, some of the best certainly in the county and in the state. And part of that is because we have so little development. And the development that has been done, by and large, has been done carefully with regard to the environment. So I would urge that this timber harvesting law be considered by the town board. I think it would be a very good precaution for the town of Clinton. We've not seen this kind of erosion to my knowledge now, but I know this has been recommended by the planner that has helped the committee write the law. And I think that it would be in the best interest of the town for the town to pass this law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one. Russ.
Well, you're probably getting tired of seeing me, Russ Tompkins, Shulesville. When this was initially proposed, it was, as I called it, a monstrosity. It was 20-some pages, and that was a monstrosity. This one, I will say, is vastly superior to that one, but I still think it's totally unnecessary. I think $1 million is excessive for anybody to do it. Mrs. Collier was just mentioning, when you remove the roots, you remove the stability. I remember Dean saying, DEC says if you don't remove the stumps, you don't have a problem because you don't have erosion. So tree harvesting, I don't know, I've never seen them take the stumps out. I mean, I had my trees harvested some years ago for black cherry, and all the stumps are still there. They're still holding the ground in place. As far as erosion, this law does cover, I think, steep slopes, which I brought up because the forestry book allows it to go up to 30%, and originally you had it at 15%, but 30% is allowed with precautions taken, swales and stuff that go across and divert the water. As I said, this is vastly superior to what you did, and that way it's a compliment, but in my estimation, it is still totally unnecessary. I just can't see any tree harvesting being undertaken in any great expanse in the town of Clinton, so I'm opposed to it.
Thank you. Next one. Anybody else? Okay, Jim?
Jim Brands. You may recall I appeared here once before when this was originally discussed, and I'd like to discuss it in a little bit more of an expansive view. There's this term called coercive utopianism, where somebody has an idea and they want to have that idea fostered on the rest of society. And I see this town perhaps being pushed in a direction that it has never been pushed, and I'm not sure it should be heading in that direction. When someone comes forward with an idea and they want to get your attention, they paint it as some kind of calamity about to happen. You'll recall there was a request for a moratorium, which I spoke against, and the fallacy that argument has been shown between then and now. And I asked everybody that night, only one person was talking about this subject. And should it make any difference that that one person is on the town board rather than sitting in the audience? If somebody in the audience said we should have a law against people drilling oil wells, would you folks then go out and have your attorney spend time and money looking at other ordinances to do it? I would hope not. And I don't think it should make a difference whether that idea comes from someone on the town board or the audience. And this, when I asked that night, has anybody had one person even speak to them about this as a potential problem? Nobody had one person who had spoken to them about it. And, you know, we've been here, what, 230 years as of this year, the town of Clinton. And I see now that we're heading in a direction of more and more control over people, their property, and I'm not sure it's that direction we want to be heading, and I would urge you to vote no because of that. This will just be the first step if you start heading in that direction. And when I heard the other night, if you review your January 9th meeting, where it suggested, well, by the proponent not only of this law, but the next one coming in down the line, let me take a look at some other local ordinances. I presume to be looking at maybe Northeast, Pine Plains, Milan. No, the local ordinances that were suggested were from Massachusetts, Connecticut. I did not know that local ordinances included the continental United States. I would have presumed it was more local. And I'm not sure that we had the same values that people perhaps in San Diego or Hartford feel that they have to have, or the control that they feel they need over their populace. So let me just suggest a challenge to you. We have 4,300 people, give or take, at the last census in this town. I would doubt you'd have 10% in favor of this. If you even have 1%, 40 people who have come up to any of you and said, that's a great idea, all means vote it in. If you haven't, I would ask you not to vote it in. I think it's one step down the road where one day you're going to wake up and maybe our supervisor wants to paint his house a certain color and he'll find he has to go in front of a committee to have it done. We're heading in that direction if you approve this law and ones that are in step now following it, because there will be no end. So I would ask that you vote no. Thank you.
Okay.
Could you move that, Iden, can you move that over that way a little? Maybe
Yes.
that's interfering.
I don't belong to this union.
Thank you.
I don't belong to this
I
union.
won't put you in the parking lot, I promise.
I'm Iden Sims, Pumpkin Lane. I would also urge the board to vote no on this. There's a convergence that we've seen with respect to the Town of Clinton Town Board taking up proposed regulation that interfere interfere with private property rights, in my opinion. And in each of these cases, we seem to have a solution seeking desperately for a problem. And we don't have that problem. And if you look around to the nearby towns and villages, there's nothing endemic in this area regarding a problem of clear cutting that has to be solved, and certainly not in the town of Clinton. And again, private property rights, property values, I've heard neither of these points discussed in the context of tree clearing or other regulations or another regulation being discussed by the town board that would interfere with what one could do with property that he or she owns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good, Jody.
Jody Rathjen, Pumpkin Lane. Couldn't agree with more with what Jim said. I've lived here for 30 years, and in that 30 years, I have learned of laws that have been put in place in this town based on one or two people's opinions that are on the town board, personal little things that they got slid through, and laws that generally the town doesn't even know, town people don't know about unless you happen to have a neighbor who likes to keep close track of you. And you don't have a good way to enforce any of these laws that you have on here. You don't have a police force. You said in the last town board meeting there's problems with, you know, the district attorney or whatever, and we can't get things prosecuted. And to me, you're just opening up a can of worms by regulating what people do. I own my property. I pay the taxes on it. I shouldn't have to come to you, nor should anybody else in this town have to come to you when they want to cut down a few trees. I know the law has been pared back from what it originally was, but, you know, this doesn't seem to be a problem. Am I allowed to ask a question of where did this idea even originate? Maybe I'm coming in at the 11th hour on the whole thing, but why are we even discussing this? It's not like people are clear-cutting their lots all over the place.
Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Hi, I'm Mary Pat Sternberg, and I'm the Vice President of the Board of Trustees of the Clinton Community Library. I wanted to just express some gratitude to the town board. I'd like to thank Elliot for having been the liaison to the library.
No, this only has to do with
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was a
hearing
public.
on the timber law.
Oh,
That's the
okay, I'm
only
sorry, I
subject.
thought it was the open public.
No, that's
I'll
next.
come back.
That'll come later. Okay. You don't lose your position, but you're just trying to keep it to the right subject. Anyone else on the timber law? You gonna talk on the timber law?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Michael Highland, 1561 Hollow Road. I just had a chance to skim this fairly well. It doesn't seem overly onerous to me. You can get a permit to harvest your property. You can take 10 cords off your property without any interference from the town. You can cut up to 2 acres of your property, clear cut. What I don't see a absolutely sufficient definition of clear cut, whether it includes stump removal or just cutting everything over 5 inches in diameter, 48 inches off the ground. Knowing from hearing of issues between neighbors, a situation where somebody was working on high in a hill and a tremendous amount of water comes down the hill to their neighbors, this has a bit of foresight in it, that's all. So I'm not overly disturbed with the amount of interference that this has in general. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you controlling the feedback up there? No?
I'm cutting off the
Down stuff?
room down.
Okay.
That seems to be doing it.
Maybe we gotta turn the mic more towards
We
the,
should just turn off the road sound.
Usually
so
it's
that's-
right
That's
here.
fine.
no, rotate it, that's better.
Thank you.
Because the speaker's right up there, I think. And maybe that's direct feedback from there. Anyone else? Okay. Hearing no further comments, I make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. I make a motion to adjourn the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Now we go into the regular order of business, and you'll get now into it. Is the right time?
Yep, 6:30.
Oh, 6:30, okay. We're all ready, Judy, up there to go live? Okay. I call the regular town board meeting to order for February 13th, 2018. Please rise. We pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We're gonna go through the approval of two minutes of meetings that we had earlier. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 9th, 2018 reorganizational meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Next one is to approve the minutes of the I make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 9th, 2018 regular meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, now we get into public discussion on agenda items that you see listed on the agenda under old and new business. Okay, I make a motion to open the meeting to public discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Need a second.
Oh, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, nice second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Now it's open for items on the agenda, old or new business. You got a sheet there that lists all the things. Now you come on up and talk on the microphone. Anybody?
Mary wants to speak.
Well, okay, item.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, I can address.
Well, no, you gotta come up, you gotta come up there.
Yes, I can address old business, is that correct?
Yeah, anything, old or new.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Iden Sims, Pumpkin Lane. Item 3 in old business from the January meeting is the proposal for a CCA for electricity. And I understand that a meeting had been scheduled and then, canceled for February 1st. And my question is, the meeting is canceled or postponed? Because in the piece that you published in the weekly paper, first it said canceled, then it said postponed.
I don't know if it's gonna be postponed or what. They haven't gotten back to me, and I got more information that just came yesterday in the mail, which I'll read later on under
Okay, I
my
look
report.
forward to hearing
Yeah.
that. In anticipation of that, let me distribute this. I don't know if I have enough for every board member. This is information. Sorry. This is information from the same company, and I'd mentioned at the last meeting, when this was brought up, that I had a sense that the board did not do due diligence before allowing a presentation to homeowners in the town of Clinton from representatives of this company. It took me a few minutes on the internet to determine that the principals of this company, neither of the two principals have any background in terms of educational, professional experience in having anything to do with energy provision of consumer electricity or alternative energy sources. Further, once you can find their address of a physical office, it turns out to be a boarding house in the town of Washington. And I'm very disappointed that the town board did not take a few minutes to do their homework on this before inviting the foxes into the chicken coop. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, the town board had that presentation taken place on February 1st, or should it take place in the future. The town board puts itself in the unfortunate position of implicitly endorsing this service or product or whatever the heck it is this outfit is selling. And it has nothing to do with solar, except the solar is in their name. And if you read this carefully, I challenge you to explain what it is they're trying to sell. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Arthur Wyland, 1561 Hollow Road. The local law for demolition delay of historic buildings, does that refer to buildings that are on our comprehensive plan map of historic buildings only, or any building that someone thinks might be historic?
I don't know.
Well, that remains to be seen, but the initial idea is that the list of historic properties in the Historical Society's publication from 3 years ago would be the baseline.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mary, come on up.
I apologize, I didn't realize there was a pre-meeting. So as I said, I'm Mary Pat Sternberg, and I'm the Vice President of the Board of Trustees of the Clinton Community Library. I wanted to thank Elliot for having served as our liaison to the town board, and thank Mike for stepping up and taking over that role. I think together the town board and the town and the library board make a great partnership. I'd also like to thank Carol Mackin and her work with Theron Tompkins to start addressing some of the issues that we've recently identified in terms of our facility, and so we appreciate that as well. I'd like to let everyone know that we have a book sale upcoming next weekend. We've been sorting books rapidly. I have to tell you, there's a great assortment, and if anybody has donations or is available to volunteer, we'd love to have you. Like to also let you know that Teresa and the staff has some great programs coming as part of our educational mission, and you should keep an eye on our calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Jody.
Just have a few concerns regarding. Okay. I have a few concerns regarding the demolition and the historic buildings. Few things that I've thought of on this. If you put regulations in place, you're affecting, in essence, not only those homeowners who happen to have those historic buildings, but you're going to be affecting everybody in this town. I've watched the property taxes go up and up over the 30 years we've been here. And I've watched a lot of families that have been in this community for generations no longer be able to afford to live in this community. For any of you who have renovated or remodeled a home, even one that's 30 years old, it's expensive. Things come into place that you open up a wall and you found out there's a bigger problem there. What is the town going to do for these people who own these historic homes, who need to do something to them, and it's cheaper to tear it down and build something new? Are you going to give them grant money? And if so, where's that grant money going to come from? Really, the only way I see is you're going to have to raise taxes for everybody. Either that, or you're going to chase out those people who've maybe lived here for generations and it's a family home that they just can't maintain anymore and would like to just tear it down and build something new. Now you're saying only the rich and the elite can own those older homes, those historic homes, and if they fix it up, they've got the money to do it. But the other people, you're saying they have to either live in an energy inefficient home that's falling down around them, that's possibly hazardous, just to preserve the history there. I'm all for preserving history. There's so much history in the Hudson Valley. It's one of the things I love about living here. But, you know, it becomes this huge can of worms again that you're going to open up. Who gets to decide how old is too old to mess with? You know, once your terms end up being very vague. You know, it was brought up, you know, if car's 49 years old, it's not old, but if it's 50 years old, it's old. Where is the line going to be drawn, and where is that money coming from? Are you going to give tax breaks to those people who have to fix up a home? You know, maybe an incentive if they can, but not some sort of punishment or somebody coming in and telling us, once again, here's what you can or cannot do on the property that you own and pay taxes on. I think it's a bad idea.
Russ?
Russ Tompkins, Schultzville again. I don't know how much time you're going to give me, but I have several things here tonight that I'd like to discuss. Going along with this previous lady's thing on preserving buildings, I'll use the term again. This is a monstrosity like the original tree law was. I'm looking at page 63.5I, and it says, notwithstanding anything contained in subdivision G, building inspector may issue a building permit for referred preserved building at any time after receipt of written advice from the commission to the effect that either, I love this, the commission is satisfied there is no reasonable likelihood that either the owner or some other person or group is willing to purchase, preserve, rehabilitate, or restore such building. Or two, the commission is satisfied that for at least 9 months the owner has made continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts to locate a purchaser to preserve, rehabilitate, or restore subject building, and its efforts have been unsuccessful. So you're saying the guy who wants to tear down his building, who you're letting the commission get powers over these rules, because the commission is the one that's going to determine whether these buildings fall in it, not the town board. And then they're going to say, you know, I've got to try to sell it and find somebody to preserve it before they're going to give me permission or sign off on it. This is absolutely ridiculous. You've got a demolition permit required by your law apparently now. There's no reason for somebody else to stick their fingers in here and muddy up the waters anymore. This is far beyond what should be done, and you're allowing the historical society to become the commission to make these determinations that they provide you with, and then you're supposed to follow that. I can't stress highly enough, this thing is extremely distasteful. I can't say what it makes my mouth taste like. Okay, that's one subject here. I will mention here some other things. On new business, I see item 10, introduce a local law to amend ethics laws prohibiting electing officials from also holding a point of offices. Now, I assume this is an elected official holding some other office where they're getting paid for both. I think this is, if it's legal, I don't think that this is something you want to do. It limits you to the available talents you may have for one employee who may be able to fill another part-time job. And I don't think that putting this in to amend the ethics law to prohibit this is a wise decision. I don't see any need for it. As I said, if it's legal, I think the benefits to the town having this available talents of some people would be beneficial. I see on 8 and 9, it's confusing. You've got discuss Neil Wilson's zoning revision contract, and then you got approve Morris Associations as town planner for zoning revision. I recently went to a zoning revision meeting, and I was basically taken aback by several things that I learned. Okay, and I'm going to take the time to read my notes here, because on February 5th, I attended a meeting of Zoning Revision Committee, after which I have many serious concerns as to where this is going. I realize that people have devoted many hours at a time over the past few years, but fear the direction has been misguided. First, I want to be aware that I wasn't aware the town was paying a lawyer who was a professional planner to present the new law to the board members for their review. I have recently talked to 2 town residents who have some knowledge in this, and I was told that the reason for this revision was to keep pace with the comprehensive or master plan, and the direction to this zoning revision was in response to questionnaire that was sent to all Clinton residents some time ago, I guess some years back. I was told the response rate to this mailer was only 20%. I was also advised that of the 20%, 65% voiced concerns that are now the focus of the revision, what people wanted in the town of Clinton. Realize that 65% of 20% is only 13.5% of the population. So it was assumed from a very poor response of 20% that we should follow this focus. Doing some research on sample surveys, the problem of non-response is addressed. This is called, quote, non-response bias. And I quote, if persons who respond differ substantially from those who do not, the results do not directly allow one to say how the entire sample would have responded. It was also stated that the lower the response, the higher the probability of non-response error. Rates of approximately 60% should be the goal of researchers, while 80% is preferred. Remember, we got roughly 20%. Now, response bias is a deadly blow to the reliability and validity of the survey study finding. In the town survey rate was only 20%, so the non-response bias is 80%. It is my opinion, in spite of the numerous hours devoted to this project over the past years, and the money expended, apparently, for the professional planner, the decisions were made from the very poor response survey and do not warrant the conclusion made as to what the citizens of Clinton want. I fear that this zoning revision being worked on will only add more restrictions to the citizens of Clinton that are not justified and unneeded. Unfortunately, only a few people seem to be aware of what happens in the town, and therefore now regulations become the voice of the vocal minority with their new agenda, which likely differs greatly from the wants of the majority of the citizens of the town of Clinton. So my question would be is, on 8 and 9, again, is this Neil Watson the one that's been doing this, and that's what you're going to discuss? And the second thing is, Morse Association is town planner for the zoning revision. Is that going to be, they going to replace him? But anyway, I really...
Yeah, okay. There are two separate issues, Russell.
Okay.
Neil Wilson is the consultant who's been working with us on the zoning revision. He is in the process of changing jobs, and that's why we're discussing extension or not extending his contract with the town for that purpose only. Morris Associates is a Poughkeepsie company who advises the town and has for a number of years as our engineer. When we have to build something over at the rec park or what have you, Morris Associates is the one who consults for us. They also provide planning services. And so the discussion there is whether we should extend, rather than having a separate planner, which we do now, and a separate engineer, whether we should simply combine all of those functions into one company, which would be Morris Associates, and they will be our engineer as well as our planner. So you're confounding two separate issues here.
Right, well, I do realize that a lot of time has been expended to this, but as was said before, how many people in the town have a clue of what's going on? I would say not 10%. You know, and as we have spoke before, you said, well, you know, you got to get involved. But I really feel that the way we're going with this zoning revision, I was there the other night, and luckily Dean gave me some copies of stuff that you were looking over, and I've looked at them and highlighted areas and said, I can't believe this, I can't believe this, I can't believe this, you know. And it really scares me, the thought that this is going to be presented, hopefully, I believe they said in June, and how many people are going to know about it, and it's going to be another thing that's going to be passed, and then it's all of a sudden, you know, getting a law in effect is a lot easier than getting a law out of effect, you know. That's my concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Noreen?
Noreen Kohler, George Drive. I just want to make a comment on some of the recent comments before you. I think the effort of the Historical Society, and which I'm sure for the town board, is to try to educate the public about the matter of some of the issues that the town is dealing with. I know this is certainly true for the Historical Society. And I know, for example, we've been told by historians that there was someone living in our house before the year 1800. So I go down into our basement, I look at the mud walls, the old stone walls, the old timber constructions, and I'm thinking, what was it like at that time, you know, before the year 1800, to be living in this kind of a situation, supporting yourself by farming. They had cattle and sheep, according to the records I know of the state. You know, we have a very interesting and complicated history in this town. So I think some of the efforts of the Historical Society and the Conservation Council is to try to help people understand the history and understand that we have used the resources of this town to help support the public in terms of having an excellent water supply. We have limited development in this town, not because we don't want any subdivisions, although many people are in that viewpoint, but because it helps to protect our groundwater. We are all on groundwater wells. Many of us are not even aware of that. I mean, I have neighbors that have no idea where their water comes from. They ask me, Noreen, where does my water come from? I said, well, you know, up there is rain, comes down. Oh, you know, and these are bright people. They just have never put together how we manage our resources in this town. So I think that's part of what our town efforts are to try to do, to help people understand and to try to protect what we have. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay.
I'll make a few comments and kind of address some of the things. I've been taking some notes, and so some misinformation that was said, I just wanted to clarify, just so that everybody's on the same page. First of all, Nancy, Russ, and I met, and we came up with this final version with some of the concerns that Russ had. And the law didn't come from Massachusetts or anywhere else. Originally, it was a compilation of several of the local towns, and then the final version really came from Hunter. So that's where some of the...
He's referring to the demolition.
I know the demolition, but it was lumped into the same conversation. Okay. That's why I'm trying to clarify that the Massachusetts was the demolition thing that Elliot and his wife came up with. So I just wanted to clarify that the tree harvesting law came from that. Also, the DEC does regulate if you're disturbing the soil. So if you don't remove the stumps, yes, the DEC does not get involved. The DEC also does protect the right to harvest. So we've worked with the DEC in a lot of conversations in talking to them, as well as some other harvesters, as to ways not to affect them or hurt them, and also the homeowners. So we kind of said, well, what would be a reasonable amount of land or trees to be cut where it wouldn't affect someone's, you know, feeding their own fuel source for burning wood. And we said, well, you know, if you built a house or anything else, you'd probably clear at least 2 acres. So that's why we came up with that 2 acre number. That's where some of the mindset came from. And so I just wanted to clarify some of those things. But as far as the zoning revision, so I think it was 6 years of the comprehensive plan, taking the surveys and everything else, where they took this information in, and then over the 6 years, they still had meetings where people were coming in and out, discussing the different topics as they put together that huge master plan. And so the master plan, or the comprehensive plan, is kind of an instruction to the zoning revision of what they wanted to do. So the job of the zoning revision was only to take the information that was instructed and then implement it into the current code to see where there was differences and try to modernize it. Talking about modernizing it, we've also taken some other things that are in the code and tried to loosen up. And I'll use one example, is that I find a lot of people trying to work out of their house. Well, right now our zoning does not allow you to work except for within your house if you have in-home business. So one of the suggestions that we had was to allow for someone to, if they had a barn or somewhere else, to be able to do their in-home business in another structure. So we've tried to loosen up some things too. So it's not all one-sided, where I understand what you're saying and I understand what your concerns are, Russ, that this is only just to attack and constrict and stop people from doing things, and that's really not the intent. The board is made up with a lot of different viewpoints, some on the conservation side and other on more of the business side, and I think what we've tried to do is balance back and forth. But if there are still concerns, and I welcome you and anybody else, and that's why I gave you all the documents that we were working on, to get input so that we can address them up front before it comes to the board, in which we'll still have another public hearing where people can voice what their concerns are and make adoptions and changes. But the only purpose of the zoning revision was to take that comprehensive plan and implement it. If we didn't want to do that, we shouldn't have spent the time and money. You're right. I mean, I'll agree with you 100%.
Well, I question the validity of the comprehensive plan you came up with.
You can't talk from the audience. People on TV can't hear you.
Dean, remember too, while you're on the subject, we also,
If you move the mic closer, we can't hear you.
there was a fairly substantial list of occupations that were prohibited, and we shortened that list quite a bit.
Right.
So a number of the home occupations that were prohibited by the current zoning law are now allowed. So this has not been a one-sided effort. I mean, we really have made an effort to be balanced and to incorporate, as Dean said,
Now, obviously,
different perspectives,
things,
different points of view, and also updated, because there are issues
Right.
that were not covered at all, that were not in fact issues 25 years ago, but they
so
are today.
bed and breakfasts were kind of
Airbnb,
new, but
good
now it's
example.
Airbnb, and now it's tent B&B and all these other things. So we're trying to modernize some of the rules so that it can be addressed. And as to one of the other comments as to trying to read my shorthand, but anyway. So, I mean, we're not trying to be over-restrictive. I can understand the concerns, and so, you know, we want to be accommodating and address your concerns. But please feel free to, you know, email me or call me or anything
Let's
else.
try to bring the comment, because it's comments from the audience to us, not us to the audience. I know this is useful, but we don't overextend it and make it the whole meeting.
No, that's all I had to say.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I make a motion to return to regular order of business. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Okay, supervisors' comments, I got a few. I submitted a grant request for $122,211 to Assemblywoman Dee Dee Barrett's office to replace the roof on the old highway garage and add 62 more panels to generate more electricity for the town complex. Don't know when I'll find out about it, but we try. February 19th, President's Holiday, the town offices, highway department, court will be closed. Library will be open as usual. Discussions are being held between the east and west fire districts and the town highway department to enable them to radio talk directly with each other. There is hope to get a shared services grant to cover the costs involved. The major costs are a repeater, that's a radio repeater, and upgrade and replacement of the highways radios from low band to UHF. So that's all I had to say at this time. Now we'll go into reports. Planning board.
January 16th meeting was canceled due to inclement weather. Applications were held over to the first meeting in February, which was on the 6th. There were 3 items on the agenda. A variance request on Field Road for an addition to an existing house that needed a variance because it's protruding into the rear setback. The planning board granted a positive recommendation to the zoning board of appeals. An applicant who lives on Schultz Hill Road came in continuing application for a 4-lot subdivision. Public hearing was held. Several people from the community were there, spoke up about habitat concerns, septics, and things of that sort. It was an amicable meeting. The EF, environmental assessment form, was reviewed, and negative declaration of significance was issued by the planning board for seeker purposes, and preliminary approval was granted to the application. Third item on the agenda was new. on East Falk Hill Road. Gentleman came in with a sketch plan application for a 3-lot subdivision. After considerable discussion, no action was taken because the applicant needs to go back to the drawing board and talk to his surveyor about the layout of the proposed lots, several of which do not meet the zoning requirements. End of report.
Thank you. Zoning Board of Appeals.
The Zoning Board of Appeals met Zoning Board of Appeals. On the 13th of February, there was one item on the agenda, a variance request for property located on Coyote Ridge Road, which is off Route 9G. This was a significant application that generated quite a bit of discussion, mainly because the request was for an accessory dwelling unit that was almost twice the size allowed by the zoning law, from a maximum of 1,000 to almost 2,000 square feet. So you could imagine that there was quite a bit of discussion there, but in the end, the ZBA granted the approval for the variance at the larger size, and now the applicant will return to the planning board for a special use permit to build the actual structure itself.
Is that it?
End of
Thank
report.
you. Next one, Conservation Advisory Committee.
The CAC met briefly on January 10th. Much of the meeting was spent reviewing maps for subdivision on Schultz Hill Road. And it was, their determinations after reviewing those maps were relayed to the planning board in a letter dated January 14th, 2018. Barbara Mansell is going to be hosting the Winter Bird Walk this Saturday at 9:30 a.m. out of the library, if anybody's interested in that. I was not at the meeting because I was at a training in Albany. I know Elliot did go, if there's anything you wanted to add about that meeting.
Nope, that's,
All right, then that's the report.
that's good.
Okay, thank you.
That is good.
Next one is Recreation Committee.
Excuse me, we did not meet in the winter. We will be meeting in March to start planning for the year's activity and getting everything ready for the parks, et cetera. So I will have a report next month, but there is no report this month.
I have a question on the Recreation Committee. I noticed we got about a $300 bill from the Welsh for emptying the dumpsters in the rec park, the Fran Mark Rec Park.
Okay.
And the Friends Rec Park. I thought
They should have been
closed them
discontinued.
up. I'm just
I will-
saying, I saw it when I was signing all the bills.
I will talk to Dan.
Was there a date on it?
And that was for the winter?
Yeah, January. That was just January. That wasn't
Anyway.
December. I didn't even
300,
look.
okay.
It's about 300, you add them both together.
I know we did open up the dumpsters when we had the Christmas tree burning, but that shouldn't warrant this, so I will check and get back with you on that,
Yeah,
okay?
okay. Building Inspector. Nancy?
Oh, yes, sorry about that. Okay, during the month of January, there were 6 building permits issued, number of COs and CCs with 8. Number of title searches were 14. The amount of mileage that the building inspector actually traveled for the month of January was 154 miles. The total cost of construction is $71,863, of which that comprises the 8 permits, and the 2 big hitters for that was a renovation on 2395 Salt Point Turnpike for $18,888, and a residential alteration on 429 Lake Drive for the amount of $40,000. End of report.
Thank you. Zoning Administrator.
Okay, this is a first report from our new zoning administrator for the month of January. 4 items on his report. A violation issued for a property on East Falk Hill Road for junk car, he refers to as junk cars and rubbish. Prior compliance order had been issued back in December, but the homeowner had not complied. Previous CEO or zoning administrator made a visit in July. Again, no improvements to the property. Court action will be pursued. Second item, a property on 4th Avenue. The zoning administrator went out to inspect it. This was essentially a mobile home that had been at some point along the way converted into an actual two-story house, which is now in violation of building coverage and setback issues following Section 250 of the zoning law. An expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use, and application will be forwarded to the planning board for review, probably for a variance of some kind. Third item on his report is 43, or actually I think it's 143 Field Road, having to do with construction of an addition. I mentioned previously in the report on the planning board. Planning board was, building permit was denied. Applicant is going before the planning board for an area variance, which subsequently was granted. And the fourth item on the agenda is a general one, which Dean and I were speaking of before, having to do with Airbnbs. The zoning officer has been getting calls from people who are interested in having Airbnbs, which of course, as we all know, are not addressed in the current zoning code, but hopefully will be in the revision. And that is the report.
Okay, thank you. Highway, I don't know who's going to talk.
Whichever. So, the highway crew went out and sanded 8 times during the winter storm, plowed 5 times, cleaned the trucks from each time they went out with the storm. Continued maintenance, cleared drains and ditches, cut some trees down around the town, and patched roads are ongoing. And that's the end of the report.
Okay, thank you. Schrack?
There was no meeting this month, but the chairman of the Scenic Roads Committee made a site visit out on to inspect the proposed subdivision on Schultz Hill Road at the request of the planning board. And as a note here, having reviewed the premises and the site, the members of the committee and I have no objection to this subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Library report.
The library board meeting took place last night. Much of the meeting revolved around long-term planning now that the library has a more stable funding stream with the 414 in place. I also was invited to 2 facilities committee meetings this month, and Carol came to the second one very graciously. There were a lot of questions about maintenance of their facilities and what facilities they had access to. Carol has been helping to facilitate making those repairs. A couple of things worth mentioning. The town board at some point last year approved the repairing of the fascia on the outside of the building. And there was a question of when that work is going to get done to make the building more inviting for patrons. And secondly, the only handicapped entrance for the library is up this ramp here and through this door. When the library is open and this building isn't exactly active, they don't like to unlock that door because they can't monitor who's coming in and out. But they don't have a way of knowing if somebody is at that door. So they're wondering about, there were ideas about video doorbells. And I think it's something we should look into. And that's the report.
Next one is Cablevision or Altice.
We got 2 notifications from Altice this month. The installation charge is going to go down by $10 for all residential customers, and the Game Show Network is being removed from the sports and entertainment pack.
Oh my God.
There you go.
I figured you'd be correct.
Okay, zoning revision.
So some of the topics that we discussed were the similar ones that we've been ongoing, which is the lighting, conference centers, minimum lots, camps, farming. I guess there's some definition changes in farming as to what once was a stable is now a commercial equine, or whatever. So we're trying to address and update some of those terms. The accessory short-term rentals, which is what Elliot was talking about earlier. some of the ag market definitions and changes. The ridge line, which Russ expressed some concerns about, so, John and I also had conversations afterwards. And then aquifer, which is another topic that is very difficult in the sense, if you don't have a map, you can't really define it. So that's a topic that'll probably take even longer to discuss. And that's the end of the report.
Okay, thank you. The next one is the proposed transmission lines that've been very quiet. I do have some comments here, nothing to affect what's happening here at the moment. In the 6 years after Governor Cuomo heralded his energy highway plan to transmit electricity from upstate to downstate, no major new transmission projects have been built or fully permitted. NextEra, that's a development company, NextEra Energy, was selected by New York State Independent Service Operators for construction of the AC transmission line from wind farms no, I get this mixed up. This is from wind farms near Syracuse to Albany with an expected completion of 2022. It still needs PSC approvals, so who knows how long that'll take. For the $1 billion AC transmission line from Albany to Pleasant Valley, New York State Independent Service Operators has not selected a developer yet. It is about 15 months behind schedule with no end date given. The Champlain Hudson Power Express DC power line from Canada's hydroelectric generators to New York City is fully permitted but has no customer in New York City, so nothing is happening. The electric users, the ratepayers, commonly called you and me, will be paying for all the costs associated with all the new transmission lines and generators, whether it be wind, solar, nuclear, who knows. There is no change in the status of the new power line activity going through Clinton at this time. There will be no power line workshops after the town board meeting tonight. That's the end of that one. Anybody else have any other reports?
Nope.
Okay, then we'll jump into the item old business, tree harvesting local law.
Well, I think it's time to vote. We've been through this for a year, back and forth. I think everybody's position is pretty clear. We've worked this, reworked it and reworked it and reworked it and tried to accommodate concerns from the community people as well as board members. And I'm, at this point, I think it's time to make a decision and move on, either with it or without it. So I would like to see a vote.
Well,
Make the motion.
you gotta make a motion.
I will move that the town board, be it resolved, approves resolution number of 2018, hereby adopting said local law number 1 of 2018, entitled Timber Production and Harvesting Law, a copy of which is attached here too and made a part of this resolution, and that the town clerk be directed to enter this local law in the minutes of this meeting and give due notice of the adoption of this local law to the Secretary of the State of New York, at which time it becomes effective.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Elliot?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
I'll say nay.
Okay.
Does not pass. 2 yes, 3 no. Okay.
I would like to say something.
Sure.
I know the intent here, and there was a lot of work that went into this. And Elliot, I'm surprised you still have hair on your head from all this.
It's grayer now than it was when we
And I
started.
don't want to lose this in the event that something happens in the town where we have to resurrect something. But right now, I just don't see a need because there's no reason to do this, is my opinion. But I would like not to lose this, all right, for future
The town clerk
reference.
will keep it for the
Pardon?
record. The town clerk will be happy to keep it for the record.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. And then we'll go to the next one. local law for demolition delay for historic buildings.
Okay.
Talk about it.
Okay, I'll give a little bit of background for well, the board and also for the folks in the audience. First of all, I want to say that this is very preliminary.
It's what?
Preliminary. Very, very. This is very preliminary. What you're looking at there, what Carol Xeroxed, the copies in the back, are only for discussion. This is not carved in stone. This is only for discussion. So there's no point for people to get ahead of themselves at this stage of the game. Okay, so that's just one general comment. Basically, what I did, I brought this issue up at the board meeting last month, and with the approval, at least in principle, to pursue this from the board members. What I did was to combine our existing law regarding demolition permits with an ordinance that exists for a town in Massachusetts, which limits, it does not prohibit, very important, it does not prohibit, but it does limit in certain parameters, under certain parameters, demolition of historic buildings, okay? And that's the draft that you have in front of you, okay? It hasn't been reviewed by anybody. It hasn't been looked at by a lawyer. It hasn't been looked at by a consultant. It hasn't been looked at by anybody but me and whoever else on the board has had an opportunity to look at it. It is for discussion purposes only. The point is to try to work with residents who own historic structures to preserve those structures insofar as possible. And if you read the law, you'll see it doesn't prohibit the demolition. It just sets certain parameters within which you're allowed to do that. Nobody is raising your taxes. This has nothing to do with your taxes. Zero to do with taxes. Taxes go up, taxes go up. They won't go up because of this law. Okay. That's a whole separate issue you're getting into there. I think you need to just understand that this is for discussion purposes only. There's a long way to go before it gets any further than where it is now.
So what changed between last month and this month? I mean, I voiced the concerns last month as to...
The concerns are still there.
Right.
The same issues are
They
still...
haven't really been addressed.
No, the issues are there.
So,
The issues are
and
there.
my problem is that, okay, so the Historic Society has identified a couple of hundred houses in the town that are old, but they don't identify what the significance are. And to me, are we having a law just because something is old, or is it because of the significance?
Significance can be different things.
Exactly.
It can
And
be
we
old.
have to have the
It can,
definition
well,
on that.
well, exactly, but that's what we're doing here. That's why this is a starting point, and only a starting point. Significance can in fact be age, or in fact it can be because George Washington slept here. Either one. Historic significance is not only a building in and of itself, but it's building part of a larger community that also
And then the other
qualifies as
part
significance.
is not only the age significance thing, but is also the fact that all this is doing is delaying
Yes.
somebody up to 9 months or maybe more.
Or maybe less.
Where there's already a delayed process in going to the planning board to
Exactly.
get a building demolition permit, which will delay them at least, let's say, 30 days, most likely as well.
Basically, what we're looking at, what this law, this draft, not even a law, this proposal suggests is you have two tracks. There's one track for non-historic buildings, which would follow the same law that is on the books right now, insofar as 45 days or whatever the case might be. A parallel track, but separate, for buildings that are determined to be historic. They have to go through a more rigorous review process before they can be demolished.
So what would be that process? What would be included in that? What's going to be the stimulus for having to have someone go through all of that extra?
Well, the
Are
idea...
they going to have to hire an engineer to say whether George Washington slept there, or some historian, or? I mean, are you putting the onus on the building owner?
That I don't know. That's an issue. yes, that needs to be addressed.
I mean, and this is my big thing, and even
That needs to
some of
be
the conversation we had with Aquifer, same thing,
Yes.
is that unless we specifically identify which houses are the ones that we're most concerned about, how can we broad brush the whole town?
We need, well, what we need.
Because every road, I mean,
Yes.
in the town is of some historic
Well,
significance too.
There are several different ways of doing it. One way of doing it, in fact, this was the question that Arthur raised before, I mean, you've got a list here. Now, if you think this list is too long, then we have to find a list that's shorter. There's also a list of,
And that list goes up to pretty current, too, goes to
Yes,
1965.
65. Yes,
So, I
50
mean, we're
years.
not talking 50-year-old.
this is 50 years and older.
But I'm just
or
saying, or
60 years and older.
75 or so.
But there's also, the county did a survey too, which I have not seen, but I think they did it about 30 years ago, of historic properties, which is shorter than this list. That might be worth see if we can get a look at that, and maybe that would be the list to use. I mean, whatever list you choose, there needs to
Gotta
be
be
a
defined.
baseline. This is the list we're gonna use. I mean, for lack of anything better, and having this thing convenient, when I wrote up the draft, I used this. Doesn't have to be this.
No, that's a great start, but
And
that's,
basically, what
you know,
happened
what
is-
is the, like I said, what is the ultimate purpose is if even after 9 months, the person can still tear down the structure,
Yes.
all we're doing is really delaying something that's ultimately gonna happen. And I think that if someone with, you know, the right mind and wisdom in that first process of being identified, you got a historic home, maybe you shouldn't tear it down. Well, yeah, I've looked at everything and it's gonna cost me $200,000 if I try to restore it versus $100,000. Financially, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think 9 months is gonna change their mind. That's my whole thing.
Or you have a situation
It may
where
not.
there's a death in the
may
family
not.
and they gotta do
Oh,
a distress
of course,
sale.
of course.
And, you know, they can't wait 9 months
Well,
to go
then-
through court and
Right.
everything else
Well, that's
to do
fine,
this.
but that would also be covered by the exceptions in here.
My question to the board would be, do we even think it's worth it preserving these homes? And Ms. Rathjen herself mentioned how the Hudson Valley is filled with historic properties and things like that, and it's what attracts people here. So are we saying as a town board that we don't value those properties, or do we? And if we do, can we figure out a way to protect them? It might not be this way.
Well,
But-
obviously, there's other processes, like there's the Federal Historic Registry and so on. And then once you get onto those, then you're locked into
But those
certain.
are much more restrictive.
Oh, absolutely, you're locked into all these extra restrictions.
This thing is
And New York
hardly,
State has one too.
this
So-
is not restrictive really at all compared to those.
I mean, I lost a lot of sleep over this since the last meeting, okay? Because I love this community. I think the history of this community is key. That's why we have people coming from the city and elsewhere to live here. But we've got to do the right thing for the residents as well. So I came up with some questions, all right? Number one, do we have the stated criteria in this community for what a historic home is? That's number one, and that's one of your points. Number two, have we, and I think the answer to this is yes, have we identified, without any judgment at all, the homes that would possibly be considered? And you're saying it's 200 plus, without any kind of judgment. Number three, are the homeowners aware that their homes have been identified as something? Number three. Number four, have we published any kind of a list so that they're aware? Okay. And number five, can we handle this without some kind of a local law? There could be a process put in place where we develop a brochure, a package or whatever. All the homeowners that are involved or those who are considering moving into the area would have information on historic versus not, okay? And we move forward from there. And as far as, I agree with Dean, as far as the delay, it serves no purpose. We just had a recent incident where someone went to the planning board because they wanted to demolish something, and based on the conversation with the planning board, they changed their mind. So that may be that 30-day or 45-day or something period to getting to the planning board where something could change. But I don't see putting a local law in place without all of these issues being answered. None of us can identify or define what a historic building means in this community. So I think we have to back up from there, answer some of these issues, and then decide how we move forward without jumping into a local law. My opinion.
How else could it be handled? If it
Well, you know, we
Put
just,
a group together, a task force, whatever you want to call
No,
it.
no, no, if it wasn't a local law, how would you, that's what I mean.
well, we
Administratively,
talked
how would
about
you
what
handle
Pleasant
this?
Valley does. And that would be no different than if someone wanted to put their land into some conservation easement.
Oh, you can
We
do
could
that,
come
of
up with
course.
something like that,
Right.
and if
That-
it's voluntary and someone wants to do it,
And
that's
voluntary is
totally up
key.
to them, I mean,
Well, that's
you know.
fine, then you don't need this.
Right.
If you want to go voluntary, then you can just toss all this out the window because this does not pertain.
One of the biggest problems we have, you heard it tonight, that's why I'm sitting on this board, is communication in this town. And it works both sides. There's not a lot of interest, therefore people don't come to these meetings. We are somewhat in a shortfall in terms of getting the word out. The internet is not well used, and so people don't know what's going on. You heard from a lot of people tonight that they're negatively opposed to some of this. Is that the majority of the
What?
town or not? We don't know.
In a democratic society, it's always a small number of people who are involved.
But I do think we have
Who
to
make the
beef up
decision.
communication.
Because there's always 80% or 90% of the people who basically are not interested or don't care, or their focus is elsewhere, or what have you. And it's the 10 or 20% of the people who take the interest who are the ones who make the decision.
Here's an
And here they
example,
are.
exactly.
And
the
here they
biggest
are.
group we've had in a long
You're never going to get an 80% return on a survey.
Right.
You're never going to do that, Russell. It's not accurate, 20%. But the people who wanted to respond, responded. How do you know what the other 80% think if they don't respond and they don't tell you?
Okay.
But you have to make a decision somehow. You
Right.
can't not make a decision because 80% of the people didn't respond. You have to do the best you can with it.
Are
And
these,
hope you make
are
the
these
right law.
fair questions to ask?
Yeah.
If we start
Yeah.
here,
Yeah, they're fair questions. I think that the issue at this point, again, keeping in mind that this is just for discussion, this is very preliminary,
Right.
very early, is do you want to go further with what I did, or do you want to just say, we're not interested, go do something else? If the board is not interested in pursuing this, there's no sense in spinning wheels on something. We'll find something else to spin our wheels about.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this.
Let's all give a consensus. We know your position pretty much. I think you've been very vocal about
I
it.
think so.
What do you think?
My
Should we move ahead, or should we look at an alternative?
My
like
position is that
Pleasant Valley or something
That
like that?
I think I like the Pleasant Valley idea. I think we should be able to form something where people can voluntarily put their homes or their properties into a registry, and then that stays with the property forever, whether they sell it, whether they die, whether they, and then we can at least permanently protect those properties, and maybe the Historical Society can go around and try and convince as many of the people on that list as possible to join.
Russell's on the list. And you're, Russell, and you're second on the list.
Okay,
Jim is second on the list.
I'll support doing the voluntary type thing too, not the rigorousness of a local demolition law like this thing is coming to be, okay? Dean?
I would support the voluntary because it's voluntary. I think that if someone really had something of significance, they could be put on the national registry or the state registry, and, you know, so I think there's already an alternative there. For us to make a local law, I think is a little overbearing.
I would support the voluntary,
Okay, good.
but I would also like to clarify for people what they're volunteering for,
Oh, yeah.
okay?
There's a lot more work to be done. I mean, this just doesn't, just because he's a volunteer, it's
Right.
done, it's not. It's almost as much trouble as doing a local law, but it's not as formal.
Right.
Okay, so you got
I got my homework.
your homework, and we'll
got my
see you
homework.
next month.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is the discussion on Sun Energy's proposal. Now, at the last meeting, okay, Sun Energy, just to give, for some people who aren't too familiar, Sun Energy and Company acts, this is discussion on community choice aggregation of solar and electrical power. Acts like an independent insurance broker who seeks out the best policy for a customer. In other words, they go out, take all the people in Clinton, say they come up with 30 megawatts of usage, and then they go out and get bids. The lowest bid, they say they contract with, and that's what we get. So that's, in essence, the process they were looking at. A workshop was scheduled for February 1st, but was canceled by Sun and Energy Company. These three things caused them to redo their business plan, because that's what they were gonna propose. A federal 30% tariff on solar panels coming into the United States, mostly from China, and new rules and regulations by New York State PSC, Public Service Commission, and the federal government on this type of activity. So I don't know what the details of all of those things are, but those are the things, those three things caused them to say, whoop, we gotta redo. Now, no new workshop has been scheduled. Now, just yesterday, I received a letter from New York State Association of Towns announcing a new municipal aggregation and community choice aggregation program, which appears to be similar to Sun and Energy's program. Both governmental facilities and community residents are eligible to sign up and save. I don't have much other than one sheet of paper, so it doesn't tell me too much. But I'm going to the Association of Towns meeting this weekend, and a lot more will be available, and I'll bring it back, and that may be the better way to go. I have no idea. So we may stop with Sun and Energy and change direction and go to this municipal thing. Just don't know.
Do they have a company they work through, or do they do it themselves?
I don't know. That's all I
have no
know
idea.
is what
Okay.
you see.
Yeah, they had a company, because we were up in Albany, and they had they had a display table there. You know, my problem with all these things is, and this is why New York State has come in, is they've cracked down on some of these resellers of the supply side of the electric, and because people are paying more than what they would have if they just kept did nothing and stayed with Central Hudson. And so people are getting the 14-cent kilowatts, and you know, it just, that's why it didn't work out. We had talked about it, I think, 6 years ago, and I disagreed with it then, because the rate that they were gonna lock us in at was more than what the average was with Central Hudson before. So I haven't been a proponent, and I think that Iden brought up a great point, is that are we somehow going to be liable for this company? I don't know who they are, you know, so, you know, unless they're guaranteeing to us or providing us with a fidelity bond or, you know, some type of, you know, assurance.
There may be a lot of guys jumping in and out of this thing, because I think there's money to be made.
So they're not guaranteeing to give us less than what Central Hudson is, they're just saying that we can lock in your rate better than what anybody else can.
So I'll put it down for next month issue and bring back whatever I can, and
Okay.
we'll decide how we move forward from there. Okay, the next one is the appointment of a person to the SHRAC, Scenic Hudson Road Advisory Committee. I make a motion that the town board reappoint Chris Palamario to SHRAC from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2018. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Okay. Now, the next one is on copiers. Currently, we have 2 copiers. The new contract, because our contract runs out in about a month, is to increase the copiers from 2 to 3 by adding 1 more for the town clerk's office. The cost for the 3 copiers came in less than the previous 2 copiers, and the funds are in the 2018 budget. So in other words, we're getting more for less money. Same company, and we're getting better capability because they're newer models. So I make a motion that the town board approves the following resolution that the town board approve renewing the contract for the rental of 3 copiers with Toshiba Business Association at an annual cost of $4,316.60. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Did Denise negotiate this
Yes.
contract? We should thank her for her.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these copiers are based on the copy usage, so just
That's
because we
another
took them
factor.
out of 2 to 3, we're still not using any more. It's just that we spread it over 3 machines.
Well, but also, it's a level of convenience.
Oh,
People
yeah,
don't have to
absolutely.
run
It's
out.
definitely the better way to go.
Incredible,
Oh,
yeah.
Carol's gonna need the exercise now, doing something else.
Well, we should thank Denise for
Yes.
her efforts there.
Yell louder and she'll hear you. She'll hear you. She's back there.
Thank Denise for her efforts there.
Okay.
She must
Small
have.
Sander pickup truck, Cunningham.
You gonna do it?
So this is a sander for the pickup truck that we picked up, I think, from Red Hook last year. So we didn't have a sander for it. And so Theron, through the sale of some of the excess plows and sanders and things that we weren't using, had the money to pick up this sander. Is that correct?
Yes, replacement.
Okay, so I make a motion, be it resolved, the town board approves the following resolution. The purchase of a small Western Striker steel 1.5 yard sander for the pickup truck from Hudson River Truck and Trailer at the cost not to exceed $4,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay. Oh, okay. I thought he was gonna do it. Did you wanna do that, Sir Sherry, or
Either one, so.
you normally do them?
Yeah, I mean, this was a property that had sold, and based on what its sale price was, the argument was that the value should be reduced. Unfortunately, I mean, you know, based on square footage and everything else like that, it probably is worth what it was originally assessed for, but, you know, sale price is sale price, and that's really what the appraiser has to go by, or the assessor has to go by, so she came into a stipulation and made a recommendation, which was accepted by both parties, and so therefore, the town board's making a,
We gotta approve it.
an approval of this reduction. I mean, it's a significant reduction. I mean, it's from 800 and something to 540. I don't have the number right in front of me. 835 to 540. So it's significant, but it did sell for the lower amount. But the likelihood is that, you know, once these adjustments are made, they will be going up over time anyway, providing that the values are going up. So I make a motion, be it approved, the town board resolve that the resolution number 2018, which authorizes the attorney from the town of Clinton, Kathleen and Rothschild LLP, to enter into a stipulation with the attorneys of the petitioner, Corbley, Gartland and Raplier LLP, by Karen Hagstrom, Esquire, the terms of which are set forth in the attached stipulation, and hereby authorizes the attorney of the town of Clinton, Kathleen and Rothschild LLP, to sign and stipulate on behalf of the town of Clinton. Is there a second?
Second. Elliot.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
And this is one of the things you talked about before, right? Where we're trying to arbitrate things here as opposed to getting lawyers involved?
No, this would be the normal process.
This would be the normal?
Lawyers are involved in
Okay.
this. That's what all the names are in here for.
I think the idea is Teresa tries to negotiate it
Oh, yeah.
before it gets to this point.
Well, that's,
She
yeah,
tries
so
to
that we don't have all these
simplify it.
lawyer costs.
Well, no, what ends up happening is they don't go to Teresa directly, they go to their attorney, and the attorney sends in, you know, for
Piece of paper.
for a piece of paper, which then causes our attorney to get involved, and then Teresa gets
Oh, is
involved.
that how it works?
Unfortunately, it should go the other way around, but.
It never does.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is Aflac's new plans. Currently, Clinton has a contract with Aflac, and they would like to offer additional insurances that any town employee can purchase at their expense. The new insurances available are accident, cancer/specific disease, and hospital confinement indemnity. The flyer would be placed in the employee's payroll envelope, and they would contact Aflac directly for more information and enrollment. Payroll deductions would pay for the premiums. Now, this is what we're talking about. It's just a short little thing.
Do we get
This
the
is-
duck, we get the duck on the flyer?
Yeah, we get the duck on the
Gotta have
flyer.
the duck, okay.
This is for everyone but highway, right?
No, highway can do it.
Highway could
Yeah.
opt to
This
this,
is-
even though they have
The town
insurance.
is just allowing it
This is just payroll deduction.
payroll deduction.
Okay.
It's not an expense to the town.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that. Okay.
So, I wanted to make a motion
Oh, I didn't
to
know
approve
that.
that, yeah. I make a motion that the town board approves authorizing the placement of an Aflac flyer concerning their three new policies available to the employees, and it be placed in the payroll envelopes. And payroll deductions will pay the premium. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Should we put in there no cost to the town, or isn't that
Well, that's
necessary?
payroll deduction.
All right, okay.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, the next one is local law for zoning officer using search warrants. The reason it's got to be a local law is it's part of the zoning law, and zoning law is a local law. The current zoning law implies the zoning administrator has more search abilities than are legally available to him. This local law, which I'm talking about, clarifies his abilities to do a legal search and provides the process. In other words, there are certain situations where he must get a search warrant from the court to do things, and that was not specified in the past. So, to get us out of a legal complication and bind, we have written a local law to establish what he can do and what the process is needed for a search warrant. I make a motion that the town board approves the following resolution. Be it resolved that the town board approve resolution of 2018, introducing local law number of 2018 of the town of Clinton entitled Amendment to Chapter 250-89D of the town code, clarifying the zoning administrator's authority to obtain a search warrant, a copy of which is attached hereto, and further that a public hearing be held on such proposal at the town hall on March 13th, which is the next town board meeting, 2018, at 6 p.m. Prevailing time. Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, the next one is amending the bucket truck IMA. This amendment allows the town of Northeast to be added to the existing approved IMA with the towns of Clinton, Milan, Red Hook, and Rhinebeck. In other words, we got to all approve somebody else coming into the group. And that's what this does. I make a motion that the town board approves the following resolution. Be it resolved that the town board approve resolution of 2018, authorizing the town of Clinton supervisor to enter into an agreement amending the intermunicipal agreement for equipment sharing of the bucket truck dated March 3rd, 2016, to allow the town of Northeast to participate as a fifth.
Fourth,
No, fourth? Is it fourth?
yeah.
Oh, okay, fourth, then you're right. Participate. Second. Is there a second?
Second. I have a question.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Yeah, why? I mean, because obviously more people that use it, the more it's likely to break down, so it's basically gonna get used more. I mean, you know, so what's the advantage for us to allowing someone else
It's not
into the
used-
deal?
First of all, it's not used that much. It just, in normal use up to now experience, it's not very much. The other part is, any costs involved with maintenance or repairs are split now between 4 instead of 3. So it splits the cost and the insurances that we all gotta pay. So it, you know, they gotta pay just like we pay. So I don't see much extra usage on this kind of thing.
The issue would not be the money so much as being out of commission. Excuse me, if it's
Oh,
being.
yeah, it's gonna be taken out of commission, and
If it's used
also it's
more-
being used more.
That's what I
so
mean.
the likelihood is it's gonna break sooner.
Yeah, that's exactly. No? You don't think so?
I don't think so.
No?
No, no, no. The highway says no.
Highway says
That's
no
not-
what?
That's not gonna break sooner, it's
Oh,
not a
okay. I
problem.
didn't know what the no was about.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't see that as an issue.
And I mean, we signed up to do shared services, so it's difficult to say no, on a maybe it might break.
Well, we went to agreement with who we were sharing it with,
Yeah.
and now we're changing the terms of it.
That's why we're going through the process.
Well, I know.
And everybody else agrees so far, you know, the other towns. We're happen to be the last one. So,
I think we're always the last one, aren't we?
no, just happens to be when the town board meetings are.
All right.
Okay, so, ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Any
Give me a
opposed?
second.
I'll abstain.
One abstain. Okay. Motion carried. Okay, the next one is an extension of the AUD Annual Update document, which is essentially the town's version of the annual business report when you're running a business. It highlights all the income and expenses for the whole year and all the categories and all that kind of stuff. So, with the lateness of getting some 2017 expenses being paid, there's not enough time to properly prepare the 2017 AUD before the due date of February 28th. The extension will ask for an allowed 2-month extension for preparation. It's just a formal request with no penalties associated with it, and it's always granted. There's nothing, no problem doing this thing, so that's, and we've done this in the past, not recently, but we have. So it's not something brand new or special. I make a motion that the town board approves the following resolution. Be it resolved that the town board approve asking for a 60-day extension to file the AUD with the New York State Comptroller. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, next one is Neil Wilson zoning revision contract.
Did we get one? I don't think we have one.
We had one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the old one.
No, we have the new one.
Did we have the new one?
Yeah.
That's it.
Is it in your box?
This
I have.
one.
I did not.
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
I didn't see it.
I don't know. I saw it. It was sent to me, so.
Okay,
by-
you got it.
Maybe
No,
it's
no,
on your
sent
desk.
by Elliot. He sent it to me.
It's addressed to, well, it was addressed to both of us, so I figured you
Well,
got
you
it.
took
too.
it.
No, it was in my box.
This
one was addressed
to both of us, but you
No,
have it. I
No, the
don't.
letter's addressed to both of us.
Okay.
This one is addressed to me. I figured you got one
Yeah,
separately.
no, I didn't get one.
from. Well, I guess we'll have to postpone this. I don't know. I mean, what do you want to do? We'll make a copy for you.
May I have it? No.
Yeah, Carol should have a copy
Sure,
anyway, so
yeah.
give it to Carol and she can
Well, do
email
you want
me.
it emailed?
Yeah, you can email me.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I can get it.
Well, I got, mine's marked up already.
Yeah, yeah. Or I could, yeah, I could send you an electronic one if you want. I've got a scan.
Okay, you know what, you
I'll
keep
scan
the
it.
original, it's
I'll
to
scan it,
send
yeah.
me the,
Okay.
scan and I'll.
So, well, let's just talk in general,
Well,
we won't
basically
do
this-
anything about it,
yeah,
is
okay.
that Neil Wilson has closed up his practice in which he originally contracted with the town to do all of the town's planning service, but then in specific to the town's zoning revision. So he's now giving up the position of town planner, but because we're so close to completing the revision, we suggested that we just keep him on to finish out the process. Elliot has expressed some concerns because Mackey Button Wise, the law firm, is now representing several clients that have applications in front of the planning board and potentially the zoning board, but I don't see that tying back to us merely for the fact that he has information, they're gonna have that information whether he's helping us on the zoning revision or not. So beyond that, I think that the zoning, or the zoning revision as a committee have a pretty strong understanding of what we want, and if we felt like there was something wrong, I think we could probably deal with it, but I don't see it as being a conflict.
I would suggest that Shane be consulted. I did not talk to Shane at all on this thing so far. But to make sure that there's no conflict, because sometimes there are roundabout conflicts that are
So
not
Neil will
obvious.
not be participating in any applications in front of the town. No, I'm just saying, yeah, absolutely. So we should send a copy of that to the law.
I'll send it to Shane, or do you want to send it to Shane
It's up
with a letter?
I can send it
All right, you
if it's
send it,
easier.
and I'll distribute to the board.
Yeah, okay. You know, it's clearly there's a gray area. That's the issue, I think, is even if Neil in person does not represent clients in front of the planning board, that doesn't mean that he's not advising or consulting with them.
But he would be doing it whether he's helping the zoning revision or not. So
Yes,
where would the
that's
zoning
true.
revision be of
Well,
cons-
yeah, only insofar, I think the issue, and admittedly, it may be far-fetched, but the concern I would have would be if it were something, a complicated situation like a conference center, or what have you, or even folks over on Bull's Head Road, that conceivably Neil or his firm could end up representing these people, or other people pursuing a similar thing, but having been involved in constructing whatever the law or the regulations, it seemed to me
Might have a bias.
not that he would consciously do it. I'm not saying that he's going to sit down and say, well, how can I make this easy so that when I come back in 2 years, that's not what I'm saying, but it's going to be there. It's in his head. And conceivably, he could end up representing somebody who wants to do something that perhaps might not be in the best interest of the town. But, Neil helped us craft a zone that would allow him to do that, allow the person to do that. That's, again, perhaps far-fetched,
Right.
but it could happen.
Also, I think all of the major items that you would be concerned about, I think we've already
Yeah, probably.
crafted.
I think most
So
of
at
them
this
are
point, all we're doing is
probably done.
wordsmithing.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think most of them are probably done. Most of the tricky ones, I think, are done. So that's why I'm saying it may be a concern that's not really.
I just don't want to spend more money
No, I
and
understand.
more time
Oh, absolutely.
having someone else get involved, because everybody has, because as it is, when we send something to Shane changes, we say go and he says stop, it's,
Well,
just.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. Okay, I will send it to Shane.
Just send it to Shane,
Sure.
let's see what he
And
has
I'll
to
send-
say.
I'll send Carol a PDF, and then you can pass it around.
And we'll study it, and we'll
Yeah, okay,
put it on
fine.
an agenda for next month.
Yeah, that's fine, sure. I mean, in the meantime, we can handle a couple of meetings, I suspect, without Neil's being there, if he would prefer not to.
He shouldn't be working because we have no contract.
Yeah, in
Very
theory.
simple.
Yeah, okay, so we can deal with that.
Okay, next one is Morris
Well,
Associates as town planner.
Of course, a related issue, related to the fact that Neil is no longer representing towns as part of his new duties with the law firm. And so we need a planner to help in those cases where the planning board needs to call on somebody. And we have been calling on Neil to handle the planning issues. Pete Sotero says that his firm is capable of doing that as well.
Well, they have an on-staff planner.
And they have a planner on staff whose name was familiar to me, and I remembered where it was from. She critiqued the solar law for us a couple of years ago. Wrote a very detailed critique. Her name is Liz Axelson. She's on staff, and she has worked for other towns doing the same kinds of things that Neil has been doing for us. And basically, he said, if we're amenable, he would just continue the relationship that we have, but extend it to include planning services as well as engineering services. Of course, the planning services are paid for by the applicant, so it's no cost to the town, because this is part of the planning board review process.
But but we still gotta authorize someone to
So we
do
have
it.
to, yeah, so, I mean,
Well,
go
we're
ahead,
gonna
no,
have
done.
My concern is Morris and Associates has been working with the town for many years. And as far as I can tell, looking back in past year's minutes, which I've done for several years, there's never been any kind of an RFP. And I'm not saying that they're unqualified. I just don't think the town has done any due diligence in seeing if we have the most qualified or the most cost-efficient or those kinds of things. And they're gonna be making a profit off the town. They're gonna be making a profit off the residents of the town. And I think we need to make sure that we're protecting the residents of the town as much as possible. I do know that the planning board at the end of their last meeting said that, you know, there's gonna be a backup in cases if we don't have a planner soon. So I understand that there's an urgency to this. Is there a way to approve them temporarily for 3 months, 6 months? And
We do the contract.
and do an RFP to see if we can,
Well,
or
it takes
or
time to
look
go
around.
through the process.
Well, all the professional services are year to year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're year to
So-
year, so this would finish out the year and give us time to do it. We don't do, in general, most of these professional services every year, because one, it costs time, money.
Yeah.
And in fact, like, for example, when I do maintenance on the geothermal stuff here, the heaters and the air conditioners and all that stuff, I do it for 3 years, just to eliminate the effort of going through round.
Yeah, and I understand that. It just hasn't happened for Morris and Associates in a long time.
Yeah,
And I think it's worth looking into.
you know, typically like 5 years, something like that, we run.
So when this gets renewed in December or January next year, maybe we should think about that beforehand,
Well, yeah.
so that we can do it.
The last time I remember it being done, they came in at the most reasonable price, I mean,
And that may be, I'm not saying they
yeah.
wouldn't.
Because,
And none of them have raised their prices over the years, so that would have definitely been a flag. So, you know, we're still going off the original contract price that they started with.
so we're not getting inflation hitting us. Okay, make your motion.
Well, I guess I will make a motion that the town board agrees to extend the relationship with Morris Associates to include planning services, in addition to engineering services, at the whatever prevailing rate, current rate, what have you, effective through
It says it right here.
December 31st.
Oh, yeah.
It says it right
read
where?
Page 4.
No kidding. Wow.
You don't have to stumble.
Imagine
Number
that.
10. Look for
No,
number-
that's the
Number
Cold War veterans,
There you go.
number
Oh,
10.
number 9.
Number 9,
Oh, there it is.
page 4, bottom.
Okay, I like mine better. Okay, town board approves the following resolution. Be it resolved that the town board approves hiring Morris Associates of town engineer at the contracted rate.
Is there a second?
Second.
More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we want to do
Carried.
it until December 31st?
Until December 31st,
Okay, we'll add that.
2018?
We'll add
Sure.
that.
I still like mine better. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Getting a little punchy here.
Okay, the next one is the Cold War vets exemption. New York State just approved a local law process to change the 10-year limit for the Cold War veteran exemption to unlimited. This must be approved by April 10th to be effective for 2018. There are 3 veterans that would lose this exemption in 2018 if not passed quickly by, the April 10th date. So that's why we went through quickly to put this all together. And that's all it is just allowing it. Before we couldn't do that because state law didn't let us to do it, and, we're just trying to make it all come out right. I make a motion that the town board approves the following resolution. Be it resolved that the town board approve resolution number of 2018, introducing local law number of 2018 entitled Amendment to Chapter 210-27B of the Town Code, extending the time period for Cold War veterans exemption, a copy of which is attached hereto and made part hereof, and that a public hearing be held in relation to the proposed local law to be held at the Town Hall, March 13th, 2018, again, at the Town Board meeting, at 6:10 o'clock PM prevailing time. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carried. Okay, the next one is local law, amending ethics law, prohibiting elected officials from holding also an appointed office. In other words, getting 2 jobs.
So there's already an ethics law, and the ethics law basically bars all of us board members from holding any other paid position in the town. What this would do would expand to every elected position in the town from holding any additional paid function in the town. So in other words, you could do your liaisons and so on and so forth, as long as it didn't have pay. There is an exemption in here so that if there was a situation where it was a difficulty for us to find somebody or whatever, the board always has the ability to override this through an adopted resolution. But what my concern is that when we have people who serve in multiple positions within the town, and there's differences in cost base, so one's on a fixed salary and one's on an hourly salary, that there could be abuses. There's also other abuses that can be contemplated, and to alleviate the potential for any misdoings, I made the suggestion during November, December, when we were talking about hiring somebody for the vacancy, that we should have a plan. Now, we've been talking for over a year, off and on, about what to do as far as the tax collector's position, and that's the one that's being affected by this particular law. But this law would not go into effect until January 1st next year, so that wouldn't affect it this year. It would be a next year proposition.
I think it would go into effect upon receipt at the,
The way he wrote it was to go into effect as of January 1st, 2019.
Which would be
Okay.
after.
okay.
So yeah, I specifically walked with Shane through a lot of
Okay.
different things that we thought may be a problem, and one of them was putting in the caveat that we could override it with a resolution, and it wouldn't go into effect until January 1st next year, so that we had time to adequately deal with the problems. We had to do an emergency thing by appointing somebody for the tax collector's position, so we did what we did. But we've talked about potentially maybe eliminating the position altogether. We've had a lot of different conversations. It's really kind of stopping any problems from happening, in that I see that when someone has an elected position and can sway any type of influence, whether it be our voting influence as a board member or any other elected official's influence on the position, I just see it as being a problem. So I mentioned it before, I talked with Shane, we came up with what we came up with. I know some people aren't enthused about it, but I think it's a matter of setting the right tone to the town and the right appearance, and to avoid any potential conflicts of interest. I think it was in the best interest of the town to do it.
Well, as I told you before, I do not support the local law. I don't see any benefit that the town derives about whatever you're doing in this thing. And we've had no complaints this whole year so far, and we've had a learning process and tumultuous time trying to get everything quickly put in place and all. No complaints, people are happy, they come through, get handled, go home, and don't complain. So I think it's unnecessary, and unless you have some real proof other than your guessing of what is happening, I don't think we need it. Are we gonna stop trusting all our people? And then if that's what the issue is that you're concerned with.
No, it's just,
then
that's
we
not the
put
issue.
time clocks all over the place, and everybody's got a time clock, including you and me, so that we all can feel comfortable how much time and money we're gonna be paid.
That's not what I said.
I'm
I
just-
said this is a potential for a conflict of interest. When someone has an elected position and is also collecting a salaried position within the town, to me, that's a conflict.
It's not.
No?
Not in my opinion. Any other discussion?
I think it's the perception, you know? perception of, sort of favoritism or whatever. If there's, in my opinion, if there is any kind of doubt whatsoever, you err on the part of caution. You say, then maybe, if we're talking about trying to justify this, and if it were pervasive among this group, then maybe it's something we should adopt,
It's not required by state law at all.
No, it's not required.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
not
just saying,
required.
state law requires a lot of things that are what I consider stupid.
And
This one they haven't considered.
And this, personally, this has been the smoothest process I can see, so
Oh, no,
it's not a
no
personal
complaints.
thing.
No, not at
Not a
all.
personal thing at all.
I just have a sort of an administrative question. As far, my understanding is the reason why town board members are proscribed rather, from holding other positions
Because we have an elected,
is because we're
And we have
supervisory.
right.
Right.
Voting
We
power.
Voting
control
power.
the budget.
No,
Okay.
because
Exactly.
you can't be the boss and the employee
Well, right,
simultaneously.
exactly.
Right.
But that doesn't
That's how
apply,
the law- that's
but
how
that
the
does
law
not apply
reads.
in other cases.
No,
That's correct.
that's right.
No.
So that's why we're stuck in certain things that we can do.
And the other time a person cannot hold two positions simultaneously is if they're related in some way. And the law explains that insofar as you cannot be the town bookkeeper and the auditor simultaneously.
Right.
Because you would be essentially auditing your own work.
Right.
And that defeats the purpose. So that is the example that the law sets forth if you take the time to read
Right.
the law.
I would tend to support this, but not really even for the reasons that you're laying out. It sounds a little hippy-dippy, but we have a government of the people, so if we have all of these government jobs that we've created, then we should have as many of the residents of our community filling those jobs as we can. As many of the people of our community filling those jobs. That's how I feel about it.
That's a good desire, but not always achievable.
Sure.
I mean, look
You know,
at
there's
the-
a difficulty with our small town is that it is very difficult to find people for the positions. It's also part-time,
But that-
and that's a difficult thing too. But
And that goes into the whole thing about getting more people involved. And
Well, and you already pointed out that there is a caveat to that if we run into that problem. So we're not voting on something that's casted in concrete.
I
Well, but if there-
understand, but then we gotta vote to approve the caveat, and if we don't approve the caveat, we have calamity.
Why have
That's my
but why,
concern.
why even have that exception if, that undercuts the law? The exception undercuts the law. If you can basically vote to disregard the law, then what purpose does the law serve?
I put it in to make Ray happy.
Oh,
Yeah, but since when do we do
Because I
that?
I wouldn't override it.
I know, so, I mean, I know the
Been there-
game plan. It's
been
very
there, done
simple.
that.
I've been here
it doesn't
before.
work.
I've
Trust
been
me.
here before.
So this is just a proposition to open it up for public discussion and then potentially a vote. And so, you know, if you have other concerns, then let them be voiced or what have you.
Right.
Any other concerns? All right, well, I make a resolution to be resolved, the town board approves the following resolution. Approving resolution number 2018, introducing local law number XX of 2018 entitled Prohibition on Elected Municipal Officers Holding Paid Positions Within the Town, and that a public hearing be held in related to the proposed law at the town hall on March 13, 2018 at 6:20 PM prevailing time. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call vote?
No.
Aye.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just.
It passes. Next one is Pine Plains contract for harboring dogs.
And we can all agree on dogs, right?
Harboring though, that's a.
Like,
Do you want to do it?
Dean, or do you want me to-
Okay, I didn't realize my name was on here, but, okay.
We were auditing the town clerk, it's a town clerk deal, so
Oh,
I gave it.
I thought you were giving me to the dogs.
I'm giving you,
Putting me in with the dogs on this one.
you're in the doghouse.
I am. Okay, so, be it resolved, the town board approve the following resolution. reapproving the contract for harboring dogs according to the terms of the contract between the Town of Clinton and Pine Plains Veterinary Associates, PC,
Supervisor to sign the
Sure.
contract.
Yeah.
and allows the supervisor to sign the contract. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Any resignations, appointments? Approval of warrants.
Be it resolved, the Town Board approves the February Capital Fund warrant voucher number 1 totaling $3,995, and the February General Fund warrant vouchers number 22 through 68A through F totaling $179,761.28, and the February Highway Fund warrant voucher 9 through 38A totaling $154,527.87. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We gotta have one.
Oh, I have one here too.
You have it anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, motion to move funds. Occasionally, we gotta move funds or rename account numbers. And that's all, mostly account numbers this time. I make a motion that the town board approves the following resolution. Be it resolved that the town board approves resolution of 2018, a resolution to move funds at the February 13th, 2018 meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. The next one is no approval. The January 2018 Supervisor's Report is a draft and will be approved when the year 27 books are reconciled. In other words, we got to put in all the numbers that are 27 expenses that we're paying in the approval of warrants. So we'll have a bunch of them when it comes up. Okay, the next one is public. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up before we hit public discussion? Okay, anyone who wants to talk public discussion? Okay, I make a motion to open the meeting to public discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Okay, item.
Iden Sims, Pumpkin Lane. 2018 is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, and the Clinton Historical Society is preparing an event at its November meeting, the first Friday in November, to commemorate that centennial. And preliminary research done by Craig Marshall and some other people determined there were 20-some-odd men from the town of Clinton who were in the armed forces during World War I. And we have a roster of who they are. And over the next couple of months, we are reaching out to people in the community to see if there are anyone for whom these men are family members or friends, and if they have any memorabilia, photos, uniforms, or remembrances that they can articulate. There'll be information going out on how to identify yourself and what to do with that material or information. This could be very interesting, and I'll leave copies of the roster for the town board members. You will recognize some of the family names on this list, so this is really cool. I want to congratulate thank the Town Highway Department. This past weekend, I've driven around Millbrook and Rhinebeck, and they have not done a good job in terms of patching the roads there. I've hit some potholes in Millbrook in the town of Washington. It looks like the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and Rhinebeck also has some spots like that. I do not see that here in the town of Clinton, so the guys are really doing a good job. And also for snow removal and taking care of the ice in the storm we had the past couple of days and weeks. They've done a very good job. Last comment on the local law on ethics that was discussed. I think Mike Whitten hit on a very good point. There's a lot of talent in this town, There's a lot of people here who are retired, they have skills, they are professionals in many areas. And I think that the town government would benefit, and the entire community, the 4,000-plus souls who live in the town of Clinton, would benefit if we could access those skills. These are paying positions, part-time paying positions. And the more communication, as Nancy says, and awareness, it just increases the talent pool, access to a talent pool that's available for these positions. So I think that the affirmative vote on that was very helpful to the community. The risk is, if you have somebody wearing multiple hats, working in multiple positions simultaneously, if that person gets sick or something happens that he or she can't fulfill her responsibilities, you have a triple problem. And so why concentrate those responsibilities on a single person in a community of 4,300 people? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Sure, come on up. Okay, Denise?
I just wanted to introduce myself to everybody as Denise Beery. I'm currently the tax collector. My office hours are Tuesday nights until 8 o'clock, Thursdays from 10 to 2, and I'm here most afternoons. So for people to come in, I'm going to be the next 2 Saturdays. I'll be here in the mornings to collect taxes. I just wanted to get that word out again, and thank you for the opportunity to do the job this year. It's been really good.
How's it going?
It's great.
Thank you for
It's going
stepping in.
really well. I'm really enjoying it, so thank you. And I just wanted to introduce myself. And you can call me, email me, do whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mike Duquette from Cookingham Road, and I want to bring up a subject that Sam Moyers, who cannot be here tonight, has brought up a couple of times, and that is the ban of firearms in our town buildings. I would just like to add that unfortunately, since 2013, our nation is averaging 1 shooting in public buildings every week. So if you would please consider this, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have reached out to Sam, all right? And I've talked to him on the phone briefly. And it's my intent before the next meeting to put something on the agenda so we can at least talk about what we do or what we're able to do or whatever. Okay?
Thank you.
Baron, okay.
Aaron Hopkins, Highway Superintendent. I just wanted to clarify the bucket truck a little bit. As highway superintendents, we don't always make decisions quickly. So when that shared service come around for a bucket truck and these different things, we kind of leery on it. Then we talk among ourselves and say, oh, wait a minute, this works. So Northeast finally said, hey, wait a minute, this works, let's use it. And we don't use it enough not to share it. And it's also a piece of equipment, it's probably a 20-year truck. That's just what it is. They're gonna fall apart, they're gonna break, they're gonna be obsolete in 20 years. So let's get the most use out of it we can. And it's also one piece of equipment, if you don't use it, it's probably gonna break. It needs to move, it needs to, it's not a plow truck. Obviously, if it was a plow truck, we don't wanna share it. But it's one of the pieces of equipment sitting 6 months out of the year or whatever. So in that 6 months, let's get what we can out of it. So sometimes we make mistakes. We say, wait a minute, we don't need it. And then all of a sudden, 4 months down the line, say, wait a minute, it's working. So I'm hoping that Northeast will get something and they'll share it with us. Say, wait a minute, we got something that really works. And I was reluctant to go in with it. So that's part of the process with this share, is that we kind of talk among ourselves after the fact, but that's what happens.
Makes
Thank you.
sense. Thank you, Baron.
Thank you, Baron. Anyone else? Russ?
Russ Tompkins again, Sheltsville. This probably won't be accepted by a lot of you people, but as most of you know, I'm a retired sergeant from the state police. I did 21 years with the state police. I'm retired military also. And the best thing you can do for a criminal is to put up a sign that says gun-free zone. because that criminal then knows that that's a safe place for him to go and use a gun, okay? So be careful what sounds good is not always what is good. Like I say, it's schools are gun-free zones. People that are gonna do something wrong, take the guns in. They don't, the criminal doesn't obey a law, okay? So making a law saying that really isn't gonna affect the person who's gonna do evil to begin with. So I have that comment. It's, like I say, and most police officers that I know are strong supporters of the Second Amendment, contrary to what you would believe. I can remember when, I think it was when Clinton was in, they had all these cops lined up on the steps of the Capitol, and they were proposing gun legislation. They weren't there because they wanted to be there. They went to work and they told they had to be there that day. So just think about that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Gee, the only old person we missed was you. You don't have to come up if you don't want to.
My name's Bernadette Ducat. I live on West Cookingham. I appreciate everyone's opinion on the gun legislation. Being the good friend of a woman who was shot in a public building and killed, and being a mother with children, and being having had a boss commit suicide in front of half of his staff, I have some really strong beliefs about gun legislation and where it should be and where it should not. I do not want to run the risk of taking my children to a library or to a public building and have that exposure there when it is something we can control. What we can't control are individual people in other locations, but we can control our government buildings, and I think that that is paramount and important that we do. I'd like to thank you because I've been to several of these meetings, and several times things are brought up at this venue at the end of the day, and then we never hear anything about them. And then they get brought up again, and we don't hear anything about them. So this is the fourth time I've heard a discussion about gun legislation, and now that I know that you're going to bring it up, I sincerely thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Repeat? Okay, then I make a motion that the town returns to regular order of business. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. I make a motion that the town board adjourns the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you all for coming. See you next month.